Hey everyone, it's Allie and welcome to my channel, and today I am super excited to share with you the top 26 books that I want to read in 2026, and these books are all books that I have. I'm going to do a whole other video of probably my top 10 new releases of 2026. Pretty much read everything except for romance, and I'm not super into a lot of the heavy romantasy, but I do like to read thrillers, historical fiction. I do always mean to read more nonfiction, and now I forget what I've already said, but yeah, I do read a lot of genres. And something that I really kind of settled into this year was not putting a ton of pressure on myself to read like 100 books, 100 plus books, and just read when I really wanted to, which allowed me to get into some other hobbies, which to me includes like watching good movies. I love watching good movies and good television, and I'll talk about it more in a future video, but I do plan on setting my Goodreads goal to 50, and these 26 books are definitely going to be top of my list. So in no particular order, let's start off with this book, Dragonfly, by Layla Meekum, perhaps. And this one I have been wanting to read for a while, but the thickness of it I feel like has been a little bit intimidating to me. But winter tends to be when I read a lot of historical fiction. It's when I do want to kind of cozy up with a nice thick book. So I might even reach for this over Christmas. I have been looking at it a lot on my TBR shelf. And this one is set at the height of World War II. 5 American spies are risking their lives for their country, and one of their own pays the ultimate price. It says, this unusual group of men and women hail from very different backgrounds. A Texan athlete with German roots, an upper crust son of a French mother and a wealthy businessman, a dirt poor Midwestern fly fisherman, an orphan fashion designer, and a ravishingly beautiful female fencer. Each chooses to answer the call of duty, but for a secret reason of her or his own. So this sounds really interesting to me. I do like World War II fiction. I like that this sounds like it's going to be very character-based, and you're going to be finding out maybe secrets of each person as the book goes on. And these kinds of books too, I feel like sometimes I have a hard time getting into them, but then when I get through it, I'm like, oh my gosh, that was one of the best books I've ever read. So kind of been putting it off, but looking forward to it. Next, we've got a book that I picked up pretty recently. It was in my latest book haul. It is The Vanishing Act of Esme Lennox by Maggie O'Farrell. I've read a couple other books by Maggie O'Farrell, and I loved both of them. So she's just an author that's going to be an auto-buy author for me. She's written a pretty good amount of books, so I love when I can fall in love with a new author and they've got a great backlist. So to me, I'm just going to be on the lookout for her books when I'm at the thrift stores. I got this at a bookstore and it is secondhand. This says that Esme Lennox is a dreamy child, an odd bookish young woman, the kind of girl who stares and listens and won't flirt with boys at dances. And then in the space of a moment, Esme Lennox is gone. Fast forward 61 years, Iris Lockhart gets the call that her great aunt Esme, who she did not know even existed, is being released from Caldstone Hospital. So I think there's going to be a lot of jumping back and forth in time, which I love, and I know Maggie O'Farrell writes an excellent book, so very much looking forward to this one too. Now let's go to a series that I would really like to get into next year, and that is Stephen King's The Gunslinger. And there's a fair amount of books in this series, I think at least like 7 or 8. I started reading Stephen King a couple of years ago, and I've probably read only about 3 books by him, but I've really enjoyed everything that he has written. He is a bestseller for a reason, I'll say that. So in this series, we are following Roland, who is a haunting figure, a loner on a spellbinding journey into good and evil. In his world, he tracks the man in black, encounters an enticing woman named Alice, and begins a friendship with a boy. And it says this is the first book in what is perhaps the greatest odyssey Stephen King has ever written. Very much saying something. And now I believe this is literary fiction. We have Our Missing Hearts. This is one that I've had for a little bit and I really have been wanting to read. It says 12-year-old Bird Gardner lives a quiet existence with his loving but broken father, a former linguist who now shelves books in a university library. Bird knows to not ask too many questions, stand out too much, or stray too far. For a decade, their lives have been governed by laws written to preserve American culture in the wake of years of economic instability and violence. To keep the peace and restore prosperity, the authorities are now allowed to relocate children of descendants, especially those of Asian origin, and libraries have been forced to remove books seen as unpatriotic, including the work of Bird's mother, Margaret. Bird has grown up disapproving his mother and her poems. He doesn't know her work or what happened to her, and he knows he shouldn't wonder. But when he receives a mysterious letter containing only a cryptic drawing, he is pulled into a quest to find her. His journey will take him back to the many folktales she poured into his head as a child, through the ranks of an underground network of librarians into the lives of the children who have been taken, and finally to New York City, where a new act of defiance may be the beginning of much needed change. So this sounds excellent to me. I've heard nothing but good things about this book, and I'm a few years late. Yeah, this came out in 2022, but I know that this was very popular in a lot of book clubs, including Reese Witherspoon's book club. Now we have one that you saw in the thumbnail. I've been wanting to read it for many years. This has been in many of my TBR lists, and that is Babel or Babel, still don't know, by R.F. Kuang, I believe. And I know I'm gonna love this because I believe it's a saga. Yeah, it's a historical fantasy epic that grapples with student revolutions, colonial resistance, and the use of language and translation as the dominating tool of the British Empire. And we're starting in 1828. And from what I've heard, I feel like people either love this or hate this, but I think if you can actually settle into it, give it the time it deserves, people seem to really love it, and I do love historical fiction. It's not insanely long. It's 542 pages, and it doesn't seem too dense. There is a bit of dialogue. So this might be kind of in my own personal January TBR. Start off the year strong by tackling a book that I've been wanting to read for literal years. On the other hand, I'm probably gonna wait until the fall to read this one. This is Sunrise on the Reaping by Suzanne Collins, another book that I recently picked up. It was in my last book haul. So this is in the Hunger Games universe. It is the backstory of Haymitch, and from what I know, we're really following him in the games. And even though it's a horrible, awful, deadly thing, the Hunger Games books that do focus on the games were the ones that were the most interesting to me. And I've heard that people really loved this one. People said it was the best in the series so far. And I do really like Haymitch as a character, so I'm sure I will also love it. But I do want to wait until right before the movie comes out, which I believe is next fall, to read this one. Now let's jump to a nonfiction, and that is The Splendid and the Vile by Erik Larson, who is one of my favorite nonfiction authors. I love getting books secondhand because it's so fun when you can find little handwritten notes this person has when they started and finished it, or maybe just when they got it and finished it. But this book is following Winston Churchill, who I do think is a very interesting person in history, in London during the Blitz. And this says that Larson provides a new lens on London's darkest year through the day-to-day experience of Churchill and those closest to him. His wife Clementine, their youngest daughter Mary, their son Randolph, and his beautiful unhappy wife Pamela, Pamela's lover, and the advisors in Churchill's secret circle. Erik Larson does a fantastic job of making history very readable. The other books that I've read by him really felt like fiction. And I love history. It was one of my favorite subjects in school, and it is a goal of mine for the next year to really spend a little bit more time learning. It's kind of sad as an adult that if you're not in a program, if you're not in any kind of academic study, you're not forced to learn anything. But yeah, I do love history, and so I'd love to watch more documentaries, read more nonfiction about different events and people in history. And so going along with that, we have one of my favorite people, Roald Dahl. This is his authorized biography. It's called Storyteller, and it's one that I've had for a few years now. Just a little bit thick and dense, so that's why I've kind of avoided picking it up. But he is such an interesting person. He's the one who wrote a ton of extremely well-known children's stories. Matilda, Fantastic Mr. Fox, the BFG, so many fantastic books. I've never read anything by him that wasn't good. And yeah, this is just following his life, and he was in the war, he was an inventor, he did just all kinds of cool stuff. I think he also was pretty crotchety, so it'll be interesting to read about his personality as well. Now let's jump to some fantasy. I have the Caraval series by Stephanie Garber, who I really enjoy. She wrote the Once Upon a Broken Heart series, and I love that, and I feel like people like this one even more. And it says The Hunger Games meets The Night Circus, and I love both of those, so I am dying to get into these. Another trilogy that I've been wanting to read for a very long time is The Lord of the Rings, and look at this beautiful edition that I have. Absolutely love it. So this has the trilogy, and then I also do have The Hobbit that is in the same style. So I do want to read all of those next year. I have read The Hobbit in the past, and I think I started The Fellowship of the Ring many years ago and I just wasn't ready for it or something, and then that kind of put me off from reading it. But Lord of the Rings, the movies, they are some of my very favorite movies of all time. So yeah, I've been wanting to get into this series for many years, and this is gonna be the year. I'm gonna hold myself accountable, I've decided, by doing a mid-year check-in, and my goal is to have read at least 15, so I'm over halfway there. Next up is an iconic young adult book. It's Looking for Alaska by John Green. And this was actually his debut novel, which I didn't even realize. But he's written a ton of great books. It says, first drink, first prank, first friend, first love, last words. Miles Halter is fascinated by famous last words and tired of his safe life at home. He leaves for boarding school to seek what the dying poet Francois Rabelais called the Great Perhaps. Much awaits Miles at Culver Creek, including Alaska Young, who will pull Miles into her labyrinth and catapult him into the Great Perhaps. And Looking for Alaska brilliantly chronicles the impact one life can have on another. And this is considered a modern classic and not too long, so I should not be intimidated to read it. Unlike this one maybe, which is Demon Copperhead by Barbara Kingsolver. I actually never read anything by Barbara Kingsolver before, and I've heard that this one is very, very good, but just a little bit heavy. And another book that has some nice notes in it. That's fun. It looks like this one was passed around a bit. It says, Demon Copperhead captures the heart as it evokes a young hero's unforgettable journey to mature in the mountains of southern Appalachia. So this is a fun debate. You'll have to let me know in the comments. Do you say Appalachia or Appalachia? My husband Ryan and I have found since moving south that people in the south say Appalachia, but we both grew up in the area of what we call the Appalachian Mountains, Appalachia. So super interesting, but I think we looked it up and that is how people in the past determined if you actually were from the north or from the south, like how you pronounce that word. Don't quote me on that, but I found that very interesting. But yeah, let me know how you say it and where you live. Or grew up, I guess. But Demon Copperhead is the story of a boy born to a teenage single mother in a single wide trailer with no assets beyond his dead father's good looks and copper-colored hair, a caustic wit, and a fierce talent for survival. In a plot that never pauses for breath, relayed in his own unsparing voice, Demon braves the modern perils of foster care, child labor, derelict schools, athletic success, addiction, disastrous love, and crushing losses. Through it all, he reckons with his own invisibility in a popular culture where even the superheroes have abandoned rural people in favor of cities. I do think that this is going to be 5 stars for me. Very excited to get into it, but I'm definitely going to have to be in the right mood. Another author that I would love to get into next year is Virginia Woolf, and I've heard that this is a great place to start, and I think it's also the only book I have by her, so for me, definitely a good place to start. And this is To the Lighthouse, not too long. To the Lighthouse is made up of 3 powerfully charged visions into the life of the Ramsay family, living in a summer house off the rocky coast of Scotland. There's the serene and maternal Mrs. Ramsay, the tragic yet absurd Mr. Ramsay, their 8 children, and assorted holiday guests. From the seemingly trivial postponement of a visit to a nearby lighthouse, Virginia Woolf examines tensions and allegiances and shows the small joys and quiet tragedies of everyday life that seemingly could go on forever. But as time winds its way through their lives, the Ramsays face, alone and together, the greatest of human challenges and its greatest triumph, the capacity for change. And Virginia Woolf is, of course, a very beloved, very famous classic author. This is one I'll probably read this winter. It is A Gentleman in Moscow by Amor Towles. I read Rules of Civility in 2025 this year, and spoiler, it was one of my favorite books of the year. And I actually started this book. I'm on page 31 technically. I think I started it at the beginning of this year, and then I just wasn't in the right mood, so I put it down. But I know it's going to be good, and there is a series starring Ewan McGregor, who's one of my favorites, so I really want to watch that. So we are in 1922, following a 30-year-old count. He is sentenced to house arrest in the Metropole, a grand hotel across the street from the Kremlin. He must now live in an attic room while some of the most tumultuous decades in Russian history are unfolding outside the hotel's doors. And this is brimming with humor, a glittering cast of characters, and one beautifully rendered scene after another. This singular novel casts a spell as it relates the Count's endeavor to gain a deeper understanding of what it means to be a man of purpose. And this author has not written a ton, but it seems like everything that he writes is very, very well received. So I've got that one, but then I also do still have the Lincoln Highway, which I need to read, so maybe I will get to this one next year as well. Another series that I would love to read, but I've got to finish some other ones first, is Sarah J. Maas's Throne of Glass. And I will be honest, I started A Court of Thorns and Roses. I read the first 2 books. Thought that they were well written. I can see why people love them, but they were just a little bit too graphic for me. And I've heard that this series is much less graphic, so I'm eager to start this one. I'm not going to force myself to read the whole series if I'm not feeling it. But since so many people like it, and I do love a long fantasy series, I'm for sure gonna give it a try. It says, lethal, loyal, legendary, in a land without magic, an assassin is summoned to the castle. She has no love for the vicious king who rolls from his throne of glass, but she has not come to kill him. She has come to win her freedom. If she defeats 23 murderers, thieves, and warriors in a competition, she will be released from prison to serve as the king's champion. So that sounds to me honestly a lot more interesting than A Court of Thorns and Roses, just depends on what you're into. But let me know, have you read this? Did you like it? Is it pretty clean? But I do know that I like Sarah J Maas's writing style for the most part, so I have high hopes. Next up we have, I think this is nonfiction actually, A Train in Winter, an extraordinary story of women, friendship, and survival in World War II. It says, on an icy morning in Paris in January 1943, 230 French women resistors were rounded up from the Gestapo detention camps and sent on a train to Auschwitz, the only train in the 4 years of German occupation to take women of the resistance to a death camp. And this book is the story of these women. It's about who they were, how and why they joined the resistance, how they were captured, their journey to Auschwitz, and their daily life in the death camps, and what it was like for the 49 survivors when they returned to France. 6 of the women were still alive in 2010 and able to tell their stories of the great affection and camaraderie that took hold among the group. They became friends, and it was precisely this friendship that kept so many of them alive. So this is going to be very emotional, I'm sure, but it's so important to read stories like this. And that's another reason I do want to read more nonfiction in the future. Now let's jump to one that I actually just got. I was in Charleston and I got this at the same store that I got the Maggie O'Farrell book. And I believe it was last year around this time that I asked you guys for some of your favorite books, and so many people said Lonesome Dove. And then you were surprised that I was not familiar with it. And so I knew I had to be on the lookout for it. And I finally got it. So this is, yeah, Larry McMurtry's Lonesome Dove, winner of the Pulitzer Prize. So I really should have been more aware of it. And this was the 40th anniversary edition, and Larry McMurtry has written a ton of books, so hopefully I love it and I'll want to read more. And it looks like this edition did just come out this year in 2025. Just in case you were unfamiliar like I was, this is a love story, an adventure, and an epic of the frontier. Oh, but this is the 3rd book in a trilogy? Can I read this on its own, or should I read the other 2 first? I guess I should read the other 2 first. But it says that this is the grandest novel ever written about the last defiant wilderness of America. Journey to the dusty little Texas town of Lonesome Dove and meet an unforgettable assortment of heroes and outlaws. Women of the night will say, that's not what they say here. Indians and settlers. Richly authentic, beautifully written, always dramatic. Lonesome Dove is a book to make us laugh, weep, dream, and remember. So let me know, can I read this without reading the other 2? Or maybe I'll just get the other 2 from the library, but I finally have my hands on this book. Now we have J.K. Rowling's book, The Casual Vacancy, which was the first thing I believe that she wrote after finishing Harry Potter. And I think I read this like a really long time ago. I can't remember if I actually finished it though, but I definitely forget everything about it. Yeah, it was written in 2012, and I'm all caught up on the Cormoran Strike series, and I have this on my bookshelf, so I was like, okay, let's make this a priority to read at the beginning of 2026. And I don't know if they made this into like a movie or a series or anything like that. It says, when Barry Fairbrother dies unexpectedly in his early 40s, the little town of Pagford is left in shock. Pagford is seemingly an English ideal with a cobbled market square and an ancient abbey, but what lies behind the pretty facade is a town at war. Rich at war with poor, teenagers at war with their parents, wives at war with their husbands, teachers at war with their pupils. Pagford is not what it seems. And the empty seat left by Barry on the town's council soon becomes the catalyst for the biggest war the town has yet seen. Who will triumph in an election fraught with passion, duplicity, and unexpected revelations? So I'll be honest, I don't think I would have necessarily been drawn to pick this book up if it was not by J.K. Rowling, but she's such a fantastic author that I know it's going to be at least written well. Now we have one that I'm very intrigued by. This is Dolly Parton and James Patterson, Run, Rose, Run. I love Dolly Parton myself. I haven't read a ton of James Patterson, but this is a thriller. It says a young singer-songwriter on the rise and on the run is determined to do whatever it takes to survive. Every song tells a story. She's a star on the rise, singing about the hard life behind her. She's also on the run, find a future, lose a past. Nashville is where she's come to claim her destiny. It's also where the darkness she's fled might find her and destroy her. So yeah, very interested to see how this is. I might do some research to see how much Dolly actually wrote, or maybe she just had the idea. But let me know if you've read that one. I think that came out maybe in like 2024 and it was pretty popular at the time. Another one that I know did very well is Wayward by Amelia Hart. I believe this was a top book from Book of the Month, maybe in 2024, 2023. And this one I think I kind of put on the back burner to read because I know it does have some heavy topics in it, but I've heard it's so good, so I just need to make sure I'm in like the right mindset, I guess. But it takes place in 3 different time periods, which I love. We're looking at 2019, 1619, and 1942. And it seems like different family members from all of those times. Next up is a book from one of my favorite authors, and that is The Timekeeper by Mitch Albom. So in this book, the inventor of the world's first clock is punished for trying to measure God's greatest gift. He is banished to a cave for eternity to hear the voices of all who come after him seeking more time. Eventually, with his soul nearly broken, Father Time is granted his freedom, a magical hourglass, and a mission to redeem himself by teaching 2 earthly people, a troubled teen girl and a dying billionaire, the true meaning of time. To save himself, he must save them both and stop the world until he succeeds. Mitch Albom is a fantastic author. I haven't read everything by him, but I actually really like his fiction. He's written both fiction and nonfiction, and he is a #1 New York Times bestselling author for a reason. I will just say that. Okay, 4 more. We have Golden Sun, which is actually the 2nd book in the Red Rising series, and I just pulled this one to kind of represent that I want to get through this series. I read the first one and I really enjoyed it, and I don't want to forget too much of the first book. So I probably will actually be reading Golden Sun over the Christmas break, and I definitely just want to read the whole series by the end of next year. And Red Rising to me felt a lot like Hunger Games. It actually felt even darker. So if you like Hunger Games, I would recommend checking out the Red Rising series. And I think it's especially popular with guys. My husband really loves it. A lot of his friends really love it. So if there's a guy in your life who you want to get a little bit more into reading, maybe tell him to check out that series. And now we have The Miniaturist. I actually have this book and then the second one. It says, on a brisk autumn day in 1686, 18-year-old Nella Ortman arrives in Amsterdam to begin a new life as the wife of merchant trader Johannes Brandt. But her splendid new home is not welcoming. Johannes is kind yet distant and leaves Nella alone with his sister, the fearsome Maren. Nella's life unexpectedly changes when Johannes presents her with an extraordinary wedding gift, a cabinet-sized replica of their home. To furnish it, she engages the services of a miniaturist, an elusive artist whose tiny creations mirror their real-life counterparts in eerie ways. Johannes's gift helps Nella pierce the closed world of the Brandt household, but as she uncovers its unusual secrets, she begins to understand and fear the escalating dangers around them. Only one person seems to see the fate that awaits them. Is the miniaturist the key to their salvation or the architect of their destruction? This just sounds so good to me. I think this could easily be 5 stars, and I love that I know I've got a second book waiting. And of course, based on the cover, it's very much giving winter, so I will probably be reading this in January. Do let me know if you guys want me to do like monthly TBRs, monthly wrap-ups. Should I do it quarterly? I just felt like in the past when I was doing them every month, I felt like I was really repeating myself a lot, like talking about the books before I read them, after I read them. So let me know what you want to see. If I did do monthly TBR and monthly wrap-up, I would probably put them in the same video. But okay, now we have a book that I have been wanting to read because I loved the movie so much, and that is Bullet Train. And yeah, I just thought this movie was really excellent, and that was mostly because of how it was filmed. It just was filmed very well, I thought. But the story was also great, so I'm sure I'll love the book. And I feel like it has been long enough now since I've seen the movie that I do forget a lot of the details, so I think I'll still be interested in this. It says, Nano, nicknamed Ladybug, the self-proclaimed unluckiest assassin in the world, has been put on the bullet train by his boss, a mysterious young woman called Maria, to steal a suitcase full of money and get off at Moroka, the first stop. Simple, right? But Satoshi, the prince, young, stylish, and innocent looking, but really a devious criminal, is also on the train. Kimura's young son is in a coma thanks to the prince, and to exact his revenge, Kimura boards the bullet train, heading from Tokyo to Moroka. Sorry if I'm butchering these. The lethal duo of Tangerine and Lemon are also traveling to Moroka. I'm saying it different every time, I think. And the suitcase soon leads others to reveal their hands as well. Why are they all on the same train, and who will make it off alive? So yeah, the movie was super entertaining, and it was a little bit funny as well, so I'm interested to see if that is the style of the book. And then last we have Lost Roses by Martha Hall Kelly. I don't think I've read anything by her before. You can see I got this at Goodwill for $3. Maybe I read Lilac Girls. Sometimes the historical fiction books really blend together. I don't think I did read Lilac Girls, and this might actually be in the same universe, because it says Lilac Girls introduced the real-life heroine Caroline Faraday. This sweeping new novel, set a generation earlier and also inspired by true events, features Caroline's mother Eliza and follows three equally indomitable women from St. Petersburg to Paris under the shadow of World War I. So it sounds like I can easily read this one before Lilac Girls. I don't think I have that one, so I'll double check on that, and if I do, I'll probably read that one first, but I think it'll be really good. And I read a lot more World War II novels than World War I, so I do always like when I can read about that time period. And it's also always great when you can read historical fiction that is following real life people. But alright, if I counted correctly, those were 26 books, some of them part of a series, that I will be reading in 2026. I am putting these on this bookshelf. This is like the books that I want to read quite soon, and I'm really excited to have a fantastic year of reading in 2026. Don't know that I'll end up reading a ton of books. I think I'll easily read 50, but I'm not really aiming for 100 or more than that. But I do want to be more intentional of picking books that I really think I'll love. And I think that these 26 books are a very great start for me. So let me know if you have read any of these books before. What are you eager to get to in 2026? What's on your January TBR? And if you like this video, please make sure to give me a big thumbs up and subscribe. It really does help me out a lot. Thanks again for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye.